Success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about living a life that reflects your values and priorities. Welcome to Engineer Your Success, the podcast that helps you lead with intention and live fulfilled.
Welcome to the Engineer Your Success podcast. I am Dr. James Bryant, your host and the coach in your corner. Here on this show, we explore what it means to win at work and at home, not simply by doing more, but by leading with clarity, alignment, and intention. Today's guest is Heath Troyer. He's a construction leader, business owner, and a national advocate for mental health in the trades. He's managed multi-million-dollar projects, led teams in high-pressure environments, and speaks openly about leadership, self-awareness, and mental health in the construction industry. In this conversation, Heath and I talk about the challenges leaders face when leading people, not just managing projects. We explore how leadership culture has evolved, why self-awareness matters, and what leaders can do to better support the people that they lead. We also discuss how faith has shaped Heath's approach to both leadership and service. Let's join the conversation. Heath, welcome to the show.
James, I thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be here.
What do you see as the biggest leadership challenges facing the construction industry today?
Something I've been working on for a long time is we battle a lot in perspectives. Perspectives drive individual truths. From that, we arrive at foundational truths and how we deal with situations, how we emotionally respond. One of the biggest challenges I see is the individual perspective of employees. We come from such a heavy societal construct, very male-dominated industry. For a very long time, society has said men don't have emotions. Men should not have feelings. I call that the militant mindset. There were so many generations of fathers and grandfathers served in the military, went to war, that dealt with these horrific events. And the way they were able to endure that was by heavy compartmentalization and stuffing down a lot of those emotional responses. So when they came home, what they were left with was teaching their sons and their grandsons the same, we'll call it unhealthy mental health practices. And what that caused in the workplace as they transitioned back was, there was no self. There was the employee. As we've gotten further removed, you leave yourself in the parking lot and we're just the employee at work. And now we're reaching this era of whole self at work and at home. There's an enmeshment now that didn't used to exist. And leaders are struggling to see their employees for the whole self that they are. There's so many leadership styles and so much information that exists on how to manage employees, right? That's a very simple thing. But when you start talking about leading a whole self, another human, learning how to translate their needs, their desires, how they communicate, there is a gap that exists in this industry where leaders don't know how to best approach that.
There are two things that come to mind. It was maybe a year and a half ago, I did a podcast episode on you manage projects, but you lead people. And you can't treat people the same way you do projects. It's absolutely true. We have to speak to the whole self. And I think while this particular response was in regard to the construction industry, I think as a whole that organizations struggle with being able to do what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It is far and away not limited to the construction industry. That leading that whole self is a pervasive problem that affects the entire world in all walks of industry and in all businesses, and even in the home. We still have to know how to lead the whole self, whether it's our wives, our husbands, our children, whether they have boys or girls. It is pervasively across all aspects. Absolutely.
In organizations where we spend an enormous amount of time and there is no provision for leading the whole self, What impact do you believe that has on mental health?
The short answer, obviously, and the obvious one, is a negative impact. When you diminish someone's identity down to a job title and you treat that person as no more than the project manager, the project engineer, the administrative assistant, you fill in the blank with whatever title you want to, that is harmful. Word choice matters a lot. And when you start to put these, stripped down labels on people and you're managing them as, well, we're going to manage this project management team. And you have all of these principles and these practices that you're applying to, could be a group of 5 or 50 individuals, and that you're trying to shove all the square pegs into the round hole, or it could be the triangles into the round hole. The management and the leadership styles that exist are a one size fits all. Organizations need to be more dynamic and realize it's going to be a lot more diverse and complex than they're used to. That's going to require a lot more time, a lot more effort, a lot more intentionality to shape your leadership style to the individual, not just the title.
Absolutely. Can you walk us through any transition or examples of organizations approaching this differently?
I would love to say yes. Unfortunately, the answer is probably no. No one has the special formula. There are a lot of leadership people that I listen to. Gary Vaynerchuk with Vaynerchuk Media may be the only one that I know of that has figured out that special sauce. In the construction industry, though, we're trying to move the needle. Companies are trying to do things differently to help improve EAP programs. The leadership team of the organization knows how to show up and lead. They are at least seeing where, hey, we can have outside resources. We can have these mental health organizations. We can come in, we can coach them. We can offer counseling to the employee's spouse, to the employee's family. We can create better mental health check-ins. We can look at the physical health of our employees. Are they staying active? What does diet and nutrition look like? So a lot of companies are starting to show up for the employees in these ways. And there are tons of third-party organizations that are really here to show up and help, like I said, move that needle. But from a holistic leadership within the organizations, we're still struggling to see the individuals for that whole self, like we talked about earlier.
Okay, so what do you see as the next step? So the organizations that are moving the needle, how can we push that needle even further toward the right direction?
Sure. So one of the biggest pieces of leadership, and if you've gone through any type of therapy or any type of counseling, self-awareness is key. We have to know who we are individually before we can help lead other people. So, as we're offering these EAP systems and this therapy, these mental health programs to the employees, the leadership team needs to run to that. They need to set the example for their employees to know, hey, it's not shameful to go learn about yourself, to heal from your trauma, to learn about yourself and learn how to manage yourself, whether it's from emotional responses or just day to day, managing your life. As leaders, we need to be the first ones running to these programs. We need to be the ones learning about ourselves to better lead the people beneath us and adjacent to us. And that's something I'm seeing is starting to happen a lot more. Absolutely. Leaders are finally starting to realize, oh, wait, the more I know about myself, the easier it is for me to lead another person.
I often say that the greatest level of awareness is self-awareness because
Absolutely.
it's difficult for you to navigate and manage and lead your team if you don't really understand how to lead yourself. And that self-awareness is key.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to manage someone else's stress and you're trying to understand where they are activated from just an emotional response. But if you even understand how you're impacted by your own emotional responses, it's going to be very, very difficult to help someone else navigate through theirs.
I want to shift gears. Can you talk about this whole concept of building systems that build people?
Yeah. Um, you know, you have to look and see, okay, how are we trying to, as an organization, elevate our people? Everybody requires something a little bit different. Everybody's motivators are a little bit different. You know, what Susie wants at 25 is going to be different than what she wants at 30. What Michael wants at 30 is going to be different than he wants at 40. We need to create systems that cause continuous check-ins and evaluations with our people to make sure that we are helping them grow in the ways that they want, in the ways that feed them, that fuel them, not that just fuel the company, not that just moves the needle towards the company's agenda, but actually motivates those people. Is somebody struggling at home? And is it financially? Are they just struggling because they have a teenage daughter and it's just hormones and they could just use some support in that way? Regularly touching base with people and creating that cadence to find out what are their struggles as humans and how can we best show up to support them. That can be one-on-ones, and that could be weekly, bi-weekly. We leverage a lot of surveys for our people in our organization to see what are the needs and what can we do from a holistic standpoint, not necessarily granularly the individual, but as a company, how can we better show up for the majority? And then that gives you a lot more capacity for doing those one-on-ones to get more granular to the individual. So it's really being intentional with your time. It's really being intentional with looking at the individual and how are we best supporting them and how do they best need us to?
Yeah, it sounds like you're building a culture of connectedness and one where your employees know that you care. This is Dr. James Bryant, the coach in your corner. If you're an engineering leader who wants to win at work and at home without burning out in the process, I want to invite you to take the next step. Every week, I help my private clients bring order back to their leadership, their schedules, and their life, not because they're doing something wrong, but because success has become too heavy to carry alone. Together, we'll build the clarity, confidence, and systems you need to lead with purpose while staying present for the people who matter most, including yourself. If you're ready to build a career and a life that you don't need to take a vacation from, visit engineeryoursuccessnow.com to schedule your complimentary integrated success strategy call. Let's engineer your success together so you can win at work and at home.
We are called as leaders, as men, we are called to lead as with love, as God loves us, as we are his children. We are called to love others the exact same way. And if we can't create that, like you said, that culture of connectedness and connect intimately with our people, I have had so many conversations with people where they just share with me their struggles, their hurt, their trauma. But that allows me to see them in such a raw way that helps me navigate. But without being connected to the people in my organization, I would never be able to point them in the right direction and lead them.
Yeah. And so not only does that level of connection, work within your organization, again, in some of the other discussions that we've had, you've talked about partnering with organizations like Neighborhood Link that can make a real difference in people's lives. So can you share how that partnership works and kind of what role that plays in the community?
As a contractor, we are in a bit of a niche market. We do non-for-profit work. And I don't just mean that we build buildings for the non-for-profit organizations, but we perform the work that these non-for-profits have through grants. Something that NeighborLink does is as a means to help gentrify an area against the typical gentrification methods is they will receive grant dollars, and we will go into neighborhoods, and it could be someone with a disability. It could be a military vet who is injured. There's a lot of different things. Could be just a single mom trying to help her kids, and their homes are not built for functionality for them. So this grant money will go in, and we'll remodel their homes. We'll build ramps. We'll help make their lives more accessible and more attainable. And something else that we're working on as well are attainable housing intentional communities. And we use the word attainable housing because it's a little bit different from the affordable housing that we all know it to be, the Section 8, the HUD homes. This is attainable housing. This is trying to give space to people who may be coming out of substance abuse programs, who may have had domestic abuse issues that need somewhere to stay for a day or a couple days, or they just need a more attainable, affordable way to have a home. So we're building these smaller homes, anywhere from 250 to 700 square feet, in these communities to allow people to come together to have support. And that's really what some of these not-for-profit organizations that I work with are about, is showing that we can come together as a community in our brokenness and support each other, and we can elevate and grow beyond what society has historically said we're allowed to, and where that ceiling has seemed to exist.
That is beautiful. And you seem very passionate about giving back and reaching out and being there for people. And so to me, that is an indication that there's a backstory. There's some things from your past that help to compel you or help give you the fuel for reaching out now.
Absolutely. Well, we're just gonna get into it, right? Like, I'm a suicide survivor at 10 years old. My parents struggled from the mental health aspect. Both of their fathers were in the military, and like I talked earlier, did not have the proper tools to know how to deal with their emotions. My parents both grew up with some physical abuse in ways. My trauma was not physical by any means, but there was emotional abuse that occurred. There was some high levels of enmeshment with my mom because of my dad's inability to be present for her. So I carried some pretty heavy emotional weight for a very long time in my life. I always felt very alone. Alone was a word that I would have used to describe myself for a very, very long time. And, as an adult, being able to have perspective and have gone through a lot of therapy to better understand myself and how I'm activated and my emotional responses to things, and being able to get myself to this place now where I have two very successful businesses, and the mental health work that I do with the YMCA, with their child care services, with the mental health that I do with the CISP organization on a national level, trying to help suicide prevention and construction. I realized that because I was able to pull myself out of where I grew up, and I was able to learn the tools that exist in this world and how to apply them and get myself to the point where I am now, I feel very called by God to share knowledge, just share my experiences and help people understand who, may also feel alone or are struggling with some of those things, that they are not alone. There is a massive support system in a community that exists. And I hope to spend the rest of my life, even if I reach one person when I speak, that's one more person that doesn't have to continue to suffer in silence.
So if you're listening to this podcast episode, maybe it's the week that it's gone live, or maybe this is sometime in the future, know that Heath's words were meant for you, and that you are not alone. There's a community of people. There are people in place to help you. You are not alone. Everyone expects you to have all the answers, but who's asking you how you're doing? Who's helping you think through your challenges? Engineer Your Success Insiders is my private podcast designed specifically for you. It's like having a coach in your corner focused on helping you win at work and at home. One story, one insight, one action that you can take, all wrapped up into real coaching insights that you can use. Join at engineeryoursuccessnow.com/insiders. Heath, you mentioned, you having two successful businesses, and we haven't really talked about any of your kind of business background. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my family owned Troyer Construction. They started it in the mid 60s. I'm fourth generation in this business. An odd caveat to it is when my great uncle passed away in 2015, he was the last owner of Troyer Construction. And my wife and I did not take ownership of it until many years later, to where it is basically starting a brand new business. I worked for the family business when I was 13. I remember being on job sites with my dad and my great uncle. And I was just telling the story the other day. I remember on the first job I was on, my dad shot his hand to a wall with a framing nailer.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. And I had to help him pull that nail out of his hand. Construction is in my blood, very, very deep in my blood. I've served in a lot of different roles, obviously from labor to carpenter. I was superintendent, I was project manager, senior project manager, director of corporate safety. I was director of field operations at times. I've served in a lot of different roles in construction and adjacent to construction, but always building something. And I've built building after building after building, and through my career, and honestly, it was a lot of mentorship from one of my bosses at the time, Tom Turnwald. He really started to open my eyes to what leadership was, and that we can build buildings, but we can also help build people. And it was through that time that I spent with him that really shifted my career path, to understand that, hey, we can build more than an apartment complex. While we're building the apartment complex, more than these hotels, we can also focus on our people and help them grow. I've spent a lot of time in the construction industry. It's been over 25 years that I have been in construction and operating businesses in some capacity.
From that transformation that you had driven by that mentor, what are some steps that the listeners can take to start moving towards not only building things, but building people?
A lot of my principles come from God, and I spend every morning in the Word. I have a motivational podcast that I listen to that just helps keep me aligned. It helps remind me that even in my brokenness, I can still have enough. God will give me enough to show up to help people. I was not we'll call it a God-fearing man for many years of my life. I grew up in a very unhealthy church culture, but God found me almost 2 years ago now and has completely changed my life. And he has continued to show me that without community, without support, we cannot do it alone. And we can try to use our own might and our own willpower, but without the Spirit of God, we will never have enough. He gives me enough strength every day to continue to pour into people and to grow, to pour into my wife, my children, my coworkers, my colleagues, my peers, my family.
That is beautiful. If there's someone that's listening to this episode and they would like to connect with you or learn more about you and your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Honestly, reaching out to me on Facebook is the easiest platform. My Facebook is very simple. For my personal, is just at Heath Troyer. You can also reach me through my Troyer Construction Services Facebook page. Those are going to be your simplest forms to get a hold of me.
Okay. And we'll make sure that we include a link to both of those in the show notes. Before we close, I do give guests an opportunity. Kind of, what's one question that you'd like to ask me?
I would say, from your perspective, what does engineering success really mean? And how have you seen that play out in the stories of the people you've interviewed?
When I think of engineering your success, and I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about how it's played out in the lives of the clients that I've had and the people that I've helped. So to me, engineering your success is a partnership between you and God in navigating the road that it takes and the obstacles in the journey towards your success, defining what it is that coming together and understanding how you define success. I typically take clients through a process that I call the Engineer's Blueprint for Success. Step one is we focus on what matters most. We really try to understand what's motivating your decisions, what is happening, what really matters to you in this stage of life. I think earlier you had talked about different people at different stages have different goals or different desires. Well, the same thing in terms of really focusing on what matters most to us. It changes as life changes. The second step is visualizing what success looks like. So what does life look like when all of that is hitting on all cylinders? The third step is designing a plan to get you there. And the fourth step is executing, because if you don't execute, you'll have nice squiggly lines on paper. You have a nice set of blueprints, but if you don't execute, you will never move to building the life that you want and having the success that you want. I work with a lot of people with an engineering background, technical professionals, civil engineers, professors at universities in engineering, computer scientists. And one of the things that astounds me is that from the outside looking in, other people see our professions and they don't realize that we're people first. And I often say that engineers are people too. And as I talk to these technical professionals, as I lead them, there is this underlying thread that they have the same needs and wants as everybody else. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be accepted. And sometimes they struggle with accepting themselves for who they are. They struggle with accepting success and that they're worthy of success. So you may not believe a high functioning, high performing individual struggles with feeling like they're not worthy of success. And so I help clients unpack that, and we will dig into a lot of the challenges and the barriers that they face, and we help them overcome that.
That's beautiful. Yeah, there's a common theme that I see in a lot of high performing individuals. They all say they have a sense that they are running towards something and running from something. And understanding what those two things are is a huge piece to the self-awareness that it takes to be a good leader.
And I think sometimes we have a sense that we're running away from something, but we can't name it.
Correct.
And the something that we're running towards sometimes is very superficial until we begin to uncover what it is that truly matters to us.
Yeah, a lot of times I find the thing that we're running from is rooted in a foundational truth that is just wrong, that breeds insecurity.
Yeah.
And the feeling that you're not enough, and that what you're running towards is the hope that someday you will do enough things that will make you feel like enough. But it will never matter what you do. Your value is not measured by your works. Your value will never be measured by how many things you do, how many buildings you build, how many math formulas you're able to compute. Your worth is derived from such a deeper place, from a spiritual place, You have value just because of who you are. Just the way that you are designed is your value. You do not need to chase the acts of this world to feel valued. And if you do, unfortunately, it's going to be a life full of just constantly chasing. But the moment you can stop and just reflect on why you're feeling that way, and what those foundational truths are and where they come from, you might get a little bit of freedom.
You're worthy because you exist. God designed you exactly the way that you are. So, Heath, the question that I have for you is, over this next, let's say, 3 years, how many people do you want to impact?
To set a metric to that, to set a quantifiable number to how many people I want to impact, would be a little selfish and a little self-serving. I want to impact the amount of people that God has in store for me to.
Yeah.
Is that one? Is that 1,000? Is that 1,000,000? I'm here to walk out his will. And James, if it's 10 people over the next 3 years, then I will be so satisfied with just helping those 3 people. But if I am lucky enough to be blessed to move mountains and reach millions of people, then that is my calling, and I am so here for it, and I will show up to it. So
Okay.
this simple answer, right, is as many as God allows me to.
Okay. All right. That's great. Hey, this is James, the coach in your corner. I want to step in with a key insight from this conversation. Many leaders learn to separate who they are from how they lead, and over time, that separation starts to feel normal. What Heath modeled is a different way. His leadership, his care for people, and his faith aren't separate roles. They're expressions of the same person, Heath. And that matters because winning at work and winning at home doesn't start with better systems or even more discipline. It starts with alignment, when who you are, what you value, and how you lead all begin to match. So here's one action that I want you to take this week. Notice one place where you may be leading from a role, doing what you think you should do instead of from who you really are. And I want you to choose one small way that you can show up more fully this week. That's it. No overhaul, no fixing, just awareness and one intentional action. So in a moment, we're going to close the episode with something that I've never done before on the podcast. And I'm going to pray for Heath for the impact of his work, for the people that he's meant to reach, and for the calling that he is walking into. I am going to close this episode in a way that I've never closed any episode before this one. And
Okay.
if you allow me, I will pray for you.
Absolutely.
Father God, I thank you for Heath, and I ask that you will continue to touch his heart, that you will continue to expand the message and the calling that you have given him. And whether it is meant for 3 people, for 10 people, for millions of people, that the purpose with which you have designed Heath will continue to move forward and impact the people that you have for him to impact. I thank you, and I praise your name. Amen.
Amen.